I've known Mason since we were 15. We met at basketball tryouts in high school, where he dunked like a golden god and I barely made JV. But somehow, we clicked. Me, the artsy, quiet type with a decent jump shot. Him, the all-American guy every girl crushed on and every guy wanted to be around. He was my best friend. Still is, I guess. But this story changed the way I look at him. Forever. It happened during our trip to Costa Rica last summer. 5 of us went. Me, Mason, our friend group from college. The plan was simple. Rent a villa near the beach, drink too much, and pretend we weren't all scared shitless of adulthood waiting for us back home. I wasn't expecting anything from that week. Definitely not what ended up happening on the 4th night, when Mason, my straight, unattainable best friend, looked me in the eyes and asked me to kiss him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first few days were exactly what you'd expect from 5 20-something guys in paradise. Mornings were for nursing hangovers with iced coffee and greasy breakfast sandwiches. Afternoons were for surfing, swimming, or passing out on towels under the sun. Nights were a blur of local bars, cheap rum, and drunken confessions. Mason and I were sharing a room in the villa, 2 twin beds, plenty of space. Nothing new. Hell, we'd shared worse in college. Bunk beds even. No big deal, except it felt different this time. Maybe it was the way he'd strip his shirt off the second we walked in, towel slung low on his hips after a shower, water dripping down his chest like some casual Calvin Klein ad. Or maybe it was the way he kept calling me bro in that familiar drawl while shooting me these looks that felt just a bit too long. I chalked it up to the booze. To my own overactive brain, I'd been crushing on Mason in quiet ways for years. But I knew better. He was straight. He dated girls all through college. I'd even helped him get over his last ex when she moved to New York. I was the friend. The safe one. Until that night. It started with a drinking game. We were all at the villa, too wiped from a day of cliff diving to go out again. Someone pulled out a deck of cards and poured shots of rum, and soon we were knee-deep in a messy, chaotic round of kings. If you've ever played kings with 5 drunk guys, you know how quickly it gets out of hand. Strip rules, dares, truths that start out funny and end in uncomfortable silences. Mason was already tipsy. His face was flushed, his curls damp with sweat, his tank top hanging loose. I was sitting next to him on the couch, trying to keep my cool, while he kept casually bumping into me every time he laughed. Then someone drew the make a rule card. I forget who, but the rule was stupid. Every time someone says, "Dude, you take a shot," you can guess how that went. An hour later, the bottle was half gone. One of the guys had fallen asleep on the kitchen floor, and Mason was leaning into me like gravity had changed directions. "I'm so drunk," he mumbled, his breath warm against my neck. I laughed. No shit. He turned to me, eyes glassy but focused. And then, dead serious, he said, "Hey, can I ask you something?" "Sure. If I asked you to kiss me right now, would you?" My heart stopped. I thought maybe I misheard him. But no. He was looking right at me, his face suddenly unreadable. "What?" "Just one kiss," he said, quieter now. "No weirdness. Just, like, what if I wanted to know what it was like?" I stared at him, trying to decide if this was a joke, if he was messing with me. But there was no smirk, no teasing in his voice. He was dead serious. And I didn't know what to say. I think I said something stupid like, "Are you serious?" Or maybe I just stared at him like an idiot. I don't remember. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like I could hear it over the hum of the fan and the quiet laughter from the guys in the kitchen. Mason didn't laugh. He didn't break eye contact. He just leaned back a little, letting his arm drape along the back of the couch, like he hadn't just dropped a live grenade between us. "Forget it," he said after a second, looking away. "It's dumb." "No, it's not," I said quickly. I wasn't expecting that." He nodded slowly. "Yeah. Me either." The silence between us stretched. My mouth was dry. I could feel the heat of his leg pressed against mine, and I didn't move. I didn't want to move. What brought that on? I asked. He shrugged, eyes still on the wall across from us. I don't know. You ever just get curious about something and can't stop thinking about it? Yeah, I said before I could stop myself. He glanced at me. There was something in his eyes then. Vulnerability maybe, or confusion, or just the weight of the booze finally catching up to him. I've been wondering what it'd be like, he said. For a while, actually. Not just tonight. My stomach dropped. Mason, it doesn't mean anything, he added quickly. I'm not gay. You don't have to explain. I cut in. Seriously. He looked at me again, this time longer. Searching. I could barely breathe, so, he said, voice low, would you? I hesitated for one breath. Two. And then I nodded. Yeah, I said quietly. I would. He swallowed. Jaw tightening just slightly, and then he leaned in. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like in the movies, with music swelling in the background or sparks flying. It was slower than that, hesitant, like we were both afraid of breaking something invisible between us. Our lips touched, just barely. His were warm, soft, a little dry from the drinks. I didn't move. I didn't deepen it. I let him take the lead, and to my surprise, he did. His hand moved to the back of my neck, pulling me in just a little more, and then he kissed me again, longer this time. I felt his breath hitch against my mouth. I felt the way his chest rose with a deep inhale, and for a second, just one, everything else faded. The noise from the kitchen, the low beat of the music, the tension that had lived in my chest for years. It was gone. We broke apart slowly, like neither of us was totally sure the kiss was over. Mason pulled back, eyes darting away, hand dropping from my neck. Shit, he muttered. What? I asked, heart hammering. He shook his head. That was weird. Yeah, I said, but not bad. He looked at me again, and this time there was something unreadable in his expression. I need air, he said, standing up too fast and nearly tripping over the coffee table. He didn't look back as he walked out onto the balcony, sliding the glass door shut behind him. I sat there for a moment, frozen. My lips were still tingling. My body was buzzing. I had no idea what just happened, or what it meant. But I knew one thing. That kiss wasn't nothing. I didn't go after him right away. I just sat there, staring at the glass door like it might start talking. My mind was spiraling, trying to figure out if I'd just imagined the whole thing. The kiss, the look in his eyes, the way his fingers curled into my shirt like he didn't want to let go. It didn't feel like a dare. It didn't feel like a joke. It felt real. I waited maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. Time kind of blurred. Then I stood up, quietly stepped over the guy snoring on the floor, and slipped out onto the balcony. Mason was sitting on one of the chairs, legs stretched out, his beer forgotten on the railing. He didn't look at me when I stepped out, just kept staring at the dark waves in the distance, the way the moonlight shimmered on the water like something out of a dream. Hey, I said softly. He didn't respond at first. Then, you ever feel like you just did something you can't take back? I leaned on the railing beside him, giving him space. Yeah, I have. He nodded slowly. That was a lot. Do you regret it? That made him finally turn toward me. His face was still flushed from the alcohol, his curls slightly damp from the humidity. He looked tired, confused, but also something else. I don't know, he said. I didn't expect to feel anything. I stayed quiet, heart in my throat. But I did, he added. And now, I don't know what to do with that. We stood there in silence for a bit, the only sounds the soft crash of waves and the occasional shout from inside the house. I'm not trying to mess with your head, I said finally. You know that, right? I know. I don't want anything from you. I care about you, that's all. Mason ran a hand over his face, like he was trying to wipe away the confusion. I've never thought about guys that way. Not seriously, but tonight. He trailed off. You kissed me, I said quietly, like maybe he needed to hear it said out loud. Yeah, he whispered. And I liked it. That's the part that's screwing me up. There it was. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. You don't have to figure it out tonight. We're drunk. We're on vacation. Shit's weird. It's okay. Mason looked over at me again. Really looked. Have you liked me for a while? I froze. There it was. Point blank. I nodded slowly. Yeah, since probably sophomore year. He looked away again, but not like he was uncomfortable, more like he was trying to recalibrate something in his brain. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you're you. And I'm me, and I figured it wasn't even on the table. He gave a short, humorless laugh. Guess I proved you wrong. That cracked the tension just enough for me to smile. We stood there for another minute. Then he stood up. I'm gonna crash, he said, but can you, I don't know, just stay close? Yeah, I said, of course. We went back to our room without another word. I turned off the lights while he got into his bed, lying on his side, facing the wall. I climbed into mine, the silence stretching again. But this time, it wasn't heavy, just uncertain. Right as I was drifting off, I heard him whisper, barely audible, I don't know what this means, and I whispered back. We don't have to know yet. The next morning was rough. Not because of the kiss. Not entirely. Mostly the hangover. My head was pounding, and my mouth tasted like something crawled in and died. I rolled over and saw Mason still asleep in the other bed, one arm thrown over his face, the sheet barely covering his waist. For a second, I just watched him. Not in a weird way, just trying to understand what had actually happened between us. He looked peaceful, maybe a little too peaceful for someone who'd kissed his male best friend 6 hours ago and whispered, I don't know what this means, like a damn movie character. I got up quietly and headed to the kitchen. The villa was half asleep, one guy mumbling something about Advil, another trying to rehydrate with Gatorade. I made coffee, sat at the table, and tried to stop my brain from spiraling. About half an hour later, Mason walked in. His curls were a mess. He was wearing the same athletic shorts from last night and rubbing the sleep out of his eyes like he hadn't just changed the trajectory of our entire friendship. Morning, he mumbled, voice rough. Hey, I said, handing him a mug. Still alive? Barely. He took a sip and winced. Why is coffee the most disgusting thing and also the only thing I want right now? I chuckled, grateful for the normalcy. We didn't talk about the kiss. Not at first. We just sat there, sipping in silence, while the rest of the house slowly woke up around us. The sun poured in through the sliding doors, hot and golden, and way too bright. Later that day, while everyone else went into town for souvenirs and snacks, Mason and I stayed behind. He claimed he wasn't feeling great. I didn't argue. I figured he needed space, but when I came back from a walk down to the beach, he was waiting for me, shirtless, barefoot, sitting on the porch steps with a beer in hand, like something out of a surf movie. He didn't look up as I approached, just said, "Can we talk?" "Yeah," I said, sitting down beside him. He was quiet for a while. Then I didn't mean for that to happen. I know. I wasn't planning anything. I didn't think you were. But I don't regret it either. That made me turn to look at him. He still wasn't looking at me, but his thumb was worrying the label off the beer bottle, like he needed something to do with his hands. That's good, I said cautiously. I mean, I'm glad. I've been thinking about it all day, he admitted. And it wasn't just the alcohol, not really. I waited. He finally glanced over. His eyes were clear now, less confused than they had been last night, more careful. I think part of me's always wondered, he said, about stuff, about you. I just never let myself go there. I swallowed. And now? He gave a small shrug. I still don't know. But it wasn't bad. It didn't freak me out like I thought it would. We sat in that for a while. The sound of the waves in the distance. The creak of the wood under our feet. Do you want to pretend it didn't happen? I asked, trying to sound neutral even though the question made my stomach turn. No, he said immediately. I just don't know what happens next. We don't have to know, I said. There's no pressure. We're still us. He smiled, faint but real. Yeah, still us. Then, out of nowhere, he bumped his knee against mine. A tiny thing. A nothing gesture. But it landed with weight. He didn't move away. That night, the vibe in the house shifted. Not in an obvious way. No one said anything, no one noticed, but Mason and I were suddenly orbiting each other in this weird new gravity. The other guys were playing cards, cooking, still cracking the same dumb jokes. Meanwhile, I was hyper-aware of everything Mason did. Every glance. Every time he stood a little too close. Every time our arms brushed when we reached for the same beer. We didn't talk about the kiss again that night, but it hovered between us like steam on a mirror, thin, invisible, but always there. At one point, we ended up sitting out on the patio together, watching lightning flash over the ocean. It hadn't started raining yet, but the air felt charged, like the sky was holding its breath. Mason leaned back in his chair, beer resting on his stomach. I've been thinking about that time freshman year, he said suddenly. What time? He glanced over. That party at Dylan's place. Remember? We were both drunk and ended up sleeping on the same couch. I laughed. Yeah, you snored in my ear for 6 hours. Right, he smirked. But you remember what happened before that? I paused. No? You touched my leg. Like, not a big deal. Just your hand kind of rested on my thigh while we were falling asleep. I blinked. Jesus. You remember that? Yeah. It stuck with me. I remember feeling weird about it. Not in a bad way, just different. I didn't know what to make of it. My face was hot now, and I was grateful for the darkness. I didn't do it on purpose, I said quickly. If it made you uncomfortable, it didn't. He cut in. That's the thing. It didn't. It just made me question stuff I wasn't ready to question. We sat there in silence again. You ever think maybe things don't have to be so black and white? He asked eventually. I shrugged. I think about that all the time. I don't know what this is between us, he admitted. But I want to figure it out, if you're okay with that. That was the first time my chest actually felt light in days. Yeah, I said. I'm okay with that. Later, we both ended up in our room again. He went to the bathroom to brush his teeth. And when he came back, I was already in bed, pretending to scroll my phone, but really just waiting for something, anything to happen. He stood there for a second, like he was debating something. Then he flicked off the light and climbed into his bed. After a long pause, he said, "You still awake?" "Yeah." Another pause. "You think it'd be weird if I came over there?" My throat went dry. "No." I heard the shift of sheets, the creak of the mattress as he stood up, then the soft thump of him sliding into bed beside me. It was quiet. Too quiet. Then his hand found my chest, resting there lightly, like he needed to touch something real. Like he needed to know I was real. "You okay?" I whispered. "Yeah," he said. "Just don't want to overthink it tonight." I didn't say anything. I just let my arms slip around his waist. He exhaled, soft and steady. And that's how we fell asleep. Pressed together, tangled up in something neither of us had words for yet. But whatever it was real. I woke up to sunlight cutting through the curtains, sharp and bright. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I felt the weight of an arm slung across my chest, the warmth of a body against mine, and it all came rushing back. Mason, still asleep, his forehead resting lightly against my shoulder, his breath slow and even. My heart kicked up as I realized how natural it felt, how right. We'd slept like that all night, without shifting away from each other once, and he didn't pull away when he woke up. He just blinked a few times, yawned, and murmured, "Morning," like this was just a normal thing we did. "Morning," I said, careful not to read too much into it. He didn't move, After a few quiet minutes, he finally sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "That was the best sleep I've had all week," he muttered, voice still scratchy from sleep. I wanted to say, "Me too," but I didn't. I wasn't sure what came next, and I didn't want to push him into anything. The rest of the day was slow. Everyone was hungover or sunburned, and we mostly just lounged around. At one point, we ended up alone again in the pool, floating lazily on inflatable loungers while the others napped inside. Mason paddled over to me, squinting from the sun. "So, last night wasn't weird for you?" "No," I said honestly. "Good," he replied, looking relieved, "because it wasn't weird for me either." He reached over and splashed water at me like he was trying to make the moment lighter, but I could tell he was nervous. I splashed him back, and we both laughed, the tension easing just a little. "I've been thinking," he said, more serious now, "about everything. And I don't want to overthink this, but I also don't want to pretend it didn't happen." I looked at him, trying to keep my voice steady. "What is this, though?" He floated closer. "I don't know yet, but I want to keep figuring it out. With you." I nodded slowly. "Okay." That night, back in our room, we didn't drink. We didn't talk much either. Just brushed our teeth, climbed into bed, his bed this time, and lay there quietly. After a while, he rolled over to face me. The glow from his phone screen lit up the side of his face, and I could tell he was nervous again. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. I didn't answer, I just leaned in. This kiss was different from the first one, less hesitant, more intentional. His hand slid into my hair, and mine found his waist. We weren't drunk. We weren't guessing. We both knew exactly what we were doing. It didn't go any further than that. Just kissing, slow and warm and real. And when we pulled apart, we were both smiling, just a little. Mason rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "Still not sure what this means." And I said, "We've got time." And we did. Because this wasn't a one-time thing anymore. This was the start of something. The last 2 days of the trip felt like borrowed time. No one else noticed anything had changed between us, at least not out loud. But I caught a few glances from our friend Drew when Mason chose to sit next to me instead of across. Or when we came out of our room together a little too late in the morning, looking a little too rested. But no one said anything. And we didn't give them a reason to. We didn't have the talk. We didn't define anything. We didn't plan. But there were small, quiet moments that spoke volumes. Like when Mason reached for my hand under the table during breakfast. Or the way he started calling me man less and started saying my name more. Our last night in Costa Rica, we sat on the beach together after everyone else had gone to bed. The sky was endless, the moon high, waves rolling in soft and steady. Mason was sitting with his knees pulled up, elbows resting on them, staring at the ocean like he was trying to memorize it. "I'm scared," he said suddenly. I looked over. Of what? Of going back home, of things going back to normal, like this was just some vacation thing. I let that hang in the air for a second. "Does it feel like just a vacation thing to you?" "No," he said. "That's what's freaking me out." We were quiet for a while. Then I said, "You don't have to have everything figured out. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm just saying, I'm here. If this is real for you, I'm here." He nodded slowly, still staring ahead, and then, without looking, he reached over and took my hand. That was the first time we touched like that in public. Even if no one was around to see it, it mattered. The flight home was uneventful. Mason sat next to me, our shoulders touching most of the way. No one made jokes. No one teased. It was like some silent shift had settled into place, and everyone just accepted it. Back in our normal lives, things weren't always simple. He had to deal with some questions, some from friends, some from himself. There were moments where he pulled back, unsure, and I had to learn patience in a way I hadn't before. But he never ran. and he never treated me like a secret. And about 2 months after we got back, while we were hanging out at my place, half watching a movie we weren't even pretending to care about, he looked over at me and said, "I think I'm falling for you." And I just smiled, because I already had.